Hi, I'm Kurt Kelly, and what's going to happen today? I haven't slept in a long time, but I slept for a long time. And anyway, just follow along.
Help control cravings with Contrave. Now you can talk to a doctor online and get free shipping at getcontravenow.com.
Weeds, nature's boomerang. At Roundup, we know they keep coming back. You never invited this stubborn little rascal to your patio, so draw the line. One spray of Roundup Max Control 365 kills to the root and keeps weeds away for up to 12 months. Because patios should be for cooking out and kicking back.
Time, there was a simple inside it, the most comfortable bed imaginable. Engineered by an award-winning team, on the Casper, life is but a dream.
Try it today. Casper.com.
On the road in West Virginia the other day, this signature Trump moment.
This was going to be my remarks. It would have taken about 2 minutes, but that would have been a little more.
It's not breaking news. The president hates sticking to the script, and he trusts his political instincts. Other Republicans, however, worry Trump's 2016 playbook is not the best plan for them in 2018. In Wisconsin this past week, a big liberal win in a state Supreme Court race brought Republican Governor Scott Walker. Tonight's results show we are at risk of a blue wave in Wisconsin. And while back home in Kentucky this week, this from the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. This is going to be a challenging election year. We know the wind is going to be in our face. We don't know whether it's going to be a Category 3, 4, or 5. I'm hoping, McConnell said, we can hold the Senate. It is interesting to watch. In West Virginia, the president is the gold standard, the safest place in the country for him to go. He throws out the script, he's loose. But Republicans watching from other places where the president's base is not so strong see that guy and get worried because they want him to talk. The economy's up. Tax cuts are good. They don't want him to be doing tariffs. A lot of them don't want him to be stirring up immigration talk if they live in more above the Mason-Dixon line in suburban districts.
Yeah, well, think about the substance of those remarks. Trump was supposed to be talking about tax reform. That was the boring script that was in front of him because that's what the Republican establishment wants him to be hammering every day. They feel like the only way they're going to be able to use their signature policy achievement, so far tax reform, as an election platform is if the president is talking about it constantly. They need him to be reinforcing this message to bring back dispirited, discouraged Republican voters who so far in special elections and so on have seemed inclined to stay home. But Trump throws that out because his political instincts tell him what the people in the room want to hear. And so he says, tax reform is boring. I want to talk about immigration. That's the red meat for his base. But it probably is not, according to the Republicans who are somewhere between panicked and resigned at this point, particularly
Or are shitting themselves
they would prefer that he stick to the script that they gave.
And you look at in West Virginia also, it was one of the most at-risk Democratic Senate seats, Joe Manchin. He could have really pursued a very aggressive attack line against him if he was to do that. But instead, yeah, making points on immigration and saying things that completely distract from the message, like millions of voters voting illegally without, of course, offering any evidence to back up his claim. That becomes the news story instead of his attacks against Joe Manchin. It really underscores the Trump's the risk for Republicans and the reward for him. They need him to come to energize the base because this is going to be a base election ultimately, and the Republican voters are dispirited. But at the same time, he comes there and does these rallies, and it could have the opposite.
So I want to have a little bit of fun here in the sense that in the Republican primaries, you don't want to be against President Trump. There's a lot of places where President Trump come November, Democrat-Republican races might not play well. But look at this in Indiana Senate race. We want to show you an ad, and then we'll talk about why.
Luke Messer, he plotted with the Never Trumpers. Just
Exist? You got it.
Early in the primaries, called Donald Trump vulgar, criticized his candidacy. Now he's like, "Ooh, I'm Mr. Trump."
It shows you exactly, especially in a primary, how significant it is, how important it is. When you talk to Republicans, one thing that you often hear what their base says, and they go back home, is, do you stand with the president? That's what a lot of voters, Republican voters, want to hear, which is one reason why you don't get a lot of pushback from members of Congress going against the president. He does things that.
Here's why Democrats are so happy at the moment. The president's poll numbers are off a little bit. Republicans see that and say, can they keep going? But Democrats look at the number of women running for office. And the AP put out some new numbers this week. Now that some filing deadlines have passed. 309 women from the two major parties have filed candidacy papers to run for House seats. That tops the previous numbers. But if you look at the numbers, a lot more Democrats than Republicans. And Democrats think that the quality of their candidates, especially getting women candidates in the middle of this political environment we're in, is going to help. And early on, the results would suggest they got a good chance.
One of the popular fears I hear from Republicans is that the president will turn off a lot of moderate voters and a lot of the folks who only came in 2016 to vote for him, while energizing his opponents in the kind of the so-called resistance movement. And I think you're seeing a lot of that. We had a poll this week in the Washington Post that looked at the super uptick in people's protest, activism, 1 in 5 Americans who out at protests and rallies because of this president, either supporting him or opposing him. And the cross current that the president could, really alienate some Republicans while driving folks on the left to polls and remember is potentially damaging.
When we start to get into the busier primaries coming up soon, so we're going to learn a lot more about the 2018 landscape coming up for us next. Our reporters share their notebooks, including what the White House is expecting now that H.R. McMaster is out and the new National Secretary John Bolton on the way in. America's Choice 2018 is brought to you by the American Petroleum Institute. Learn more at powerpastifpossible.org.
Dad, hi. I had a very minor fender bender tonight in an unreasonably narrow fast food drive-through lane. But what a powerful life lesson. And don't worry, I have everything handled. I already spoke to our Allstate agent, and I know that we have accident forgiveness, which is so smart on your guys' part. But the fact that they'll just forgive you all these stuff. Okay, yeah, good night.
With accident forgiveness, your rates won't go up just because of an accident. Switching to Allstate is worth it.
Hey, allergy muddlers. Are you one sneeze away from being voted out of the carpool? Try Zyrtec. Zyrtec starts working hard at hour 1 and works twice as hard when you take it again the next day. Stick with Zyrtec. Muddle no more.
Starting Sunday, save up to $18 on Zyrtec products. See Sunday's newspaper.
Innovation is an ever-evolving journey. It pushes us beyond the ordinary. The Greenworks Pro 60-volt 21-inch mower, sold exclusively at Lowe's and Lowe's.com.
With T-Mobile, get the fastest network ever. Now on the fastest Samsung ever, because fast should be fast. Now at T-Mobile, buy one Samsung Galaxy S9 and get one free.
Let's begin. Yes or no? Do you want the same tools and seamless experience across web and tablet? Do you want $4.95 commissions for stocks, 50-cent options contracts, $1.50 futures contracts? What about a dedicated service team of trading specialists? Did you say yes? Good. Then it's time for Power E-Trade, the platform price service that gives you the edge you need. Looks like we have a couple of seconds left. Let's do some card twirling. Twirling the cards. E-Trade, the original place to invest online.
From the time I was like 9 years old until I was probably 14, the majority of that time was spent in an orthodontist office, which is the most awkward point of anyone's life to begin with. I was right out of college and I was starting job interviews and meeting a bunch of new people, and I already noticed that my teeth were starting to shift. My parents spent all that money and it was kind of all for a waste. So when I heard of Smile Direct, I was so excited.
At Smile Direct Club, we believe everyone deserves a smile they'll love. That's why for 60% less than braces, we send invisible aligners directly to you. We straighten most smiles in an average of 6 months.
I was so excited to know that there was a company that was number one affordable and number too, so convenient here. You don't have to go to orthodontist every month. You can go into a smile shop. They also have a kit that they can ship directly to your house. So there's really no excuse to not try it.
Get your confidence back risk-free. Our Smile Guarantee ensures that if aligners aren't a good fit for you, you get your money back.
Having straight teeth is such a great feeling.
Get started at SmileDirectClub.com for as low as $80 a month.
The most powerful man in history.
Closed captioning brought to you by OnlyMeso.com.
We offer a free book on mesothelioma. Call for the free book and receive so much more. Call 1-800-831-3700.
Let's hit it one last time around the Inside Politics table. Ask our great reporters, share a little something from their notebooks, help get you out ahead of the big political news just around the corner. Eliana?
I'm watching the 3 nominations that President Trump has sent up to the Senate for CIA Director, Secretary of State, and Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Republicans in the Senate are annoyed and fatigued at having to push these through, and Democrats have a real opportunity to energize their base by opposing these. I'm looking at which one they're going to try to oppose, one or more, and I think that one of these has a real chance at failing.
Interesting weeks ahead, Manu.
Speaking of nominations, Mike Pompeo, as I was saying, facing his confirmation hearing on Thursday, already in trouble in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Rand Paul has announced his opposition. It's a 1-vote advantage for Republicans on that committee. But there are 2 Democrats who voted for him for CIA director when he was confirmed by 66-32 vote. That's Tim Kaine, Jeanne Shaheen. They both sit on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Of course, being State Department Secretary versus being CIA Director, much different positions. A lot of questions about whether or not they will support him going forward. That's why this Thursday's confirmation hearing is so critical. But we'll see if any Democrats decide to jump ship, because otherwise he could be in trouble on the floor.
It gets to the floor. Mike Pence might have to stay around. Josh?
I'm looking at the beginning of John Bolton's tenure as National Security Advisor. Obviously begins Monday in the White House, and you've seen a whole reshuffling of the president's team. You've seen McMaster out, Tillerson out, and you have John Bolton who's coming in with a more hawkish worldview. You have the Iran deal decision. The president has decided if he's going to rip it up. You have North Korea talks that the president wants to do, and you have someone who has a different idea in many fronts than the president on foreign policy, but someone the president seems to have some charisma and some bonding with. So how he shapes the West Wing, I think there's some reticence at the NSC and at the State Department possibly on John Bolton, but I think it will be interesting to watch.
Interesting is, I think, a polite word there.
I've been following state-level politics and following the teacher strikes and walkouts that have been happening previously this year in West Virginia, still going on in Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Arizona could be next. We talk a lot about the House and Senate, of course, but there are 36 gubernatorial elections this November, the majority of them Republican-held. These teachers, surprising even the teachers' unions by rising up, demanding better pay. And Democrats are looking at this thinking this could be part of the wave of activism that they expect to power any success that they have. Particularly, think about it, this is about women. The teachers are mostly women. It affects moms. A lot of teachers are even running for office. So to the extent that this feeds the wave that has been driven by women voters this fall, it could help Democrats.
That's interesting, fascinating point. We'll keep watching that. I'll close with this. Congress comes back from an Easter recess tomorrow, and John McCain will still be at home in Arizona. The Republican senator has been absent since mid-December. He's home receiving treatment for brain cancer. His staff no longer discusses a return timetable after a promise that would be in January turned out to be too optimistic. Now, the senator's friends will be happy to know McCain was highly annoyed by a Washington Post story last week, noting that there are quiet conversations in Arizona and in Washington about replacing Senator McCain if he cannot return and decides to retire. McCain told several friends in recent days, "I'm not going anywhere." He's said to be in good spirits, working on building his strength, and determined to return to work. We certainly hope that turns out to be the case. That's it for Inside Politics. Again, thanks for sharing your Sunday morning. State of the Union with Jake Tapper up next. Jake sitting down with Larry Kudlow, the president's new top economic advisor, to talk about the prospect of a trade war with China. Have a great Sunday.
Certain chemicals can prevent pain from delivering the color you want. So we got rid of them. And that made our paint color more durable, more fade-resistant, and truer. It's a simpler paint formula thanks to our exclusive Gen X color technology. So now there's less standing between you and better color. That's proudly particular. Benjamin Moore, the standard for paint professionals. Only at local paint and hardware stores.
Don't miss Scott's Days at your local Ace.
Our biggest lawn and garden sale of the spring.
Right now, buy any bag of Scott's fertilizer and get a free $5 reward. Hurry in for great deals throughout the store. Right now at Ace.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
I thought I was managing my moderate to severe ulcerative colitis, but I realized something was missing. Me. The thought of my symptoms returning was keeping me from being there for the people and things I love most. So I talked to my doctor and learned Humira can help get and keep UC under control when other medications haven't worked well enough. And it helps people achieve control that lasts, so you could experience few or no symptoms.
Humira can lower your ability to fight infections, including tuberculosis. Serious, sometimes fatal infections and cancers, including lymphoma, have happened, as have blood, liver, and nervous system problems, serious allergic reactions, and new or worsening heart failure. Before treatment, get tested for TB. Tell your doctor if you've been to areas where certain fungal infections are common. And if you've had TB, hepatitis B, are prone to infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores, don't start Humira if you have an infection.
Be there for you and them. Ask your gastroenterologist about Humira. With Humira, control is possible.
I never dreamed that I would meet somebody like online dating? I know people meet that way, but where would I even begin?
Open laptop, go to OurTime.com, look for free. It's easy to take a look on Our Time, the fastest growing dating site for people over 50.
Hey, allergy muddlers. Are you one sneeze away from being voted out of the carpool? Try Zyrtec. Zyrtec starts working hard at hour 1 and works twice as hard when you take it again the next day. Stick with Zyrtec.
Starting Sunday, save up to $18 on Zyrtec products. See Sunday's newspaper.
Next, President Trump taking action on global trade and border security as another Captain Jacob might be in the works. Member of the president's party weighs in Senator Susan Collins joining me exclusively. State of the Union next on CNN.
Attention men with frequent urges to urinate. Super Beta Prostate has ingredients clinically tested to help reduce urges to urinate and waking at night to urinate. That's why it's the #1 best-selling prostate supplement in America. Don't wait. Try non-prescription Super Beta Prostate.
UFC history, 2 titles, an incredible fight between 2 of the very best in a rematch, and everybody wants to see. I cannot wait. Get me to New York. I'm undefeated woman, but meet me in Brooklyn. Let's do it that day.
Be careful drinking facts. I want my bad back.
Biggest fight of the year today. It does not get better. I bet you've never seen a bed like this. It's the new Craftmatic Legacy Rising Colorized Adjustable Unit, featuring bedside power plugs, under-bed nightlights, and more for less. Up to 50% less than Tempur-Pedic Sleep Number and other adjustables. Calm down. You gotta see how little they cost.
This is CNN, the most trusted name in news.
Escalating threats. President Trump warning China about new tariffs.
No president wanted to go against China, and we're going to do it.
And China vowing to fight back.
Blame China, not Trump.
Global fears escalating of a trade war. Will either side back down? President Trump's brand new chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, responds next. Plus, on thin ice. President Trump tweeting his continued support of his EPA chief.
I think that Scott has done a fantastic job.
As even more questions are raised about Scott Pruitt's inappropriate spending of taxpayer dollars. Can Pruitt hold on to his job? Republican Senator Susan Collins weighs in. And a blue wave coming? Republican leaders now openly expressing fear about losing their majority in the House as President Trump tries to rally his base.
We have to get Republicans in office.
Can he stop a Democratic sweep? Well, Dick Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is horrified by the reports coming out of Syria, where dozens have been killed after an apparent chemical attack. The president tweeting just seconds ago, quote, many dead, including women and children, in mindless chemical attack in Syria. Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to outside world. President Putin, Russian, and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Big price, unquote. Reports of this bloodshed comes just a week after President Trump unexpectedly announced that the U.S. will withdraw from Syria, quote, very soon. It's devastating news as the president is ramping up a battle on the economic front, continuing to escalate the confrontation with China over trade. The president tweeting Saturday, quote, the United States hasn't had a trade surplus with China in 40 years. They must end unfair trade, take down barriers, and charge only reciprocal tariffs. The U.S. is losing $500 billion a year and has been losing billions of dollars for decades, cannot continue. This morning, the president tweeting that he and Chinese President Xi will, quote, always be friends no matter what happens on trade. But the back and forth has grown into a tit for tat of threats. Thursday, President Trump threatened to bring $100 billion more in tariffs against Chinese imports, on top of the $50 billion he announced earlier in the week. And here with me now is the top White House economic advisor, Larry Kudlow. Larry, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
So one of the great frustrations in covering this issue of trade deficits is that the way the president talks about it sometimes frustrates people who are experts on what a trade deficit actually is. There's consensus we should put on the table that China has unfair economic barriers up right now. But it is false to say, as the president tweeted this morning, quote, the U.S. is losing $500 billion a year. As you know, the number is actually $375 billion. According to the Department of Commerce, but more to the point, it's not that the U.S. is losing it. Americans are getting goods and services in exchange for that $375 billion. Before you took this job, you said, quote, the trade deficit is not a reflection of a bad economy. In fact, it's the opposite. Do you think there's a danger here that if the president continues to talk about it this way, as if it's a zero-sum game, the American people will think the goal is to have a zero trade deficit, which is never going to happen with China?
Well, I don't think it's a problem if the president expresses himself as the president expresses himself. I think personally, I'm a big supporter of this China. Look, we have had to go in and fire a shot across the bow. China's behavior is 20 years now. It's more than unfair trading practice. It's illegal trading practices because they're stealing our property rights, our intellectual property rights. They're forcing technology from our companies to be open so they can get it. And they have tall trade barriers. The president is to some extent right about the trade deficit. They have high barriers. They have high tariffs. This stuff's got to stop. No president's had the backbone to take it up publicly before. So I think he's exactly right. And I say to everybody on this, the problem here is China. It is not President Trump. China's been getting away with this for decades. Past American presidents refused to take them on. I think President Trump's doing exactly the right thing. And I think it's going to generate very positive results, which will grow our American economy. It will help grow China's economy. It will help grow the world economy.
I'm not taking issue with the idea that China is the root of the problem here. There's consensus, and there has been for a long time. And you're right, President Trump is doing something where previous presidents haven't. The question is whether this threat of hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs is the right approach. Just in the last couple of months before you took this job, you said the tariffs were, quote, prosperity killers. You pointed to them as one of the causes for the Great Depression. You wrote an op-ed titled, quote, Mr. President, tariffs are really tax hikes. Wouldn't tariffs, if President Trump actually pulled the trigger, be a huge mistake?
No. By the way, Steve Moore-Laffer and I wrote that piece. We didn't like the blanket tariffs. We didn't like the blanket tariffs, which would hurt our allies as much or more as our enemies. So we didn't like that. And we think there might have been some downstream problems for the U.S. economy. This one's different. Look,
you would support if the president pulled the trigger on the hundreds of billions of dollars of tariffs against China?
Yes, I would. You absolutely would. No free market guy, no free trade guy disagrees on this subject. The guild, if you will, the brethren of the economics profession, have all agreed that something has to be done. Now, Jake, remember, this is a process, right? No tariffs have been implemented yet. Very
I get that.
Yeah, in this last round that was announced late last week, the President asked Bob Lighthizer, our trade diplomat, to consider whether an additional round of tariffs would be necessary or useful. And part of that is because after we made the first round, the Chinese response was unsatisfactory, to put it at least. So the president's trying to get their attention again. Process may include tariffs. I cannot rule that out. It may rest eventually on negotiations. We will see how the president wants to do it. He's pretty good at negotiating, but he's also pretty good at standing his ground. And again, this, to look at it this way, the American economy, what are we? We are driven by advances in technology, which are the backbone of our entrepreneurship. They're the backbone of our ingenuity. That's the reason the American economy is #1 in the world. And by the way, we should talk about this because it's really flourishing under Trump policy. But I'm just saying, but the Chinese cannot be allowed to steal our technology because that's the bread and butter of our
I hear what you're saying, but you also seem to be saying two things here. One is that this is a negotiation and the process is healthy.
It could be.
And then the idea that ultimately if you pull the trigger, even though you've spent a lifetime deploring and condemning tariffs, that would be a good thing. The rhetoric, even though the trigger hasn't been pulled, the rhetoric has had a big economic impact. You talk about all the good things that Trump has done for the economy. The Dow fell almost 600 points on Friday. It's down 10% over the last 2 months under the threat of this trade war, the threat of retaliation causing problems for farmers, especially people in Trump country. Soybean prices down 4% this week, costing soybean farmers $1.7 billion in crop value. What do you say to those farmers who say, ultimately, I don't like this negotiation. It's hurting my bottom line.
We're talking to them, by the way, on a daily basis to see. So far, I don't really think it's fair. I mean, you're right. There's been a bump down in farm commodity prices. I agree. I'm not at all sure that this is going to last. I don't know how this is going to, again, this process may turn out to be very benign, okay? You have to take certain risks as you go in. We're taking them. We're making our case. Nothing's happened so far. We're looking at future actions. You got comment periods for another couple of months on our proposals. We'll see what, maybe China will want to come around and talk in earnest. So far it hasn't. I hope it does. American economy is so resilient, Jay. We're growing at 3.1% annual rate. I used to do this for a living. Right, 3% annual rate last 3 quarters. Business investment is booming right now.
But you're threatening to undermine all of that.
And the stock market is still up, 25% plus since the election. Here's the deal. You talk to a Wall Street guy, earnings, profits are the mother's milk.
Yeah.
Profits are coming in like gangbusters. I'm not going to predict the stock market. I don't think they want me to. I have some thoughts on the matter.
Right, I'm sure you do.
We're going to do fine with these earnings. Earnings are everything.
As a business guy, I also want to ask you about President Trump calling on Amazon to pay billions of dollars to the federal government, accusing them of bankrupting the U.S. Postal Service. It's not accurate, but it is true that they pay a lower rate in postage, as do all bulk providers, bulk users. While under attack from President Trump, Amazon stock, and this isn't, they employ more than 500,000 people, has fallen 11% in the last 2 weeks. You're a believer in free markets. I can't imagine that you support any president of the United States, singling out an American company and just bad-mouthing it for weeks while its stock goes down.
Well, the issue here, as I understand it, is to have a level playing field with regard to tax collection. That's the issue.
They support the tax bill that's going through Congress, Amazon.
Yeah, sometimes. And they're doing more in states now than they were, although they have not been collecting local taxes.
So you support the president bad-mouthing this private company?
It's not so much bad-mouthing company, Jake. It's let's have a level playing field for all the new internet retailing that's going on. The industry is changing fundamentally. It's going to continue to change like that. But you should pay taxes in whatever jurisdiction you're operating. And that was the original beat that the president had with Amazon. Amazon, look, it's a strong company. It's going to remain a strong company. Lots and lots of retailers are going to become internet retailers. Let's have the tax situation apply to everybody. The Texas Senate can't keep doing it.
They pay the taxes they're required to pay. I want to ask you one last question. CNN, the Associated Press, Washington Post, New York Times, lots of media outlets reporting that it seems that Chief of Staff John Kelly's influence has been waning in the West Wing, with the president working around him, not including him in policy and key personnel decisions. Kelly threatening to quit multiple times during his tenure. It doesn't sound like a great relationship between the president and his Chief of Staff. What's your impression of during the book?
So I've been on the job 5 days. John Kelly has been great to me. He is in charge. He's operating a much improved process. And every time the president and I talk in that segment about the president has nothing but good things to say about General Kelly. That's what I'll say. I don't personally think this is the real story. The president trumped about it. The president tweeted.
They're using Trump as a senator for tweet now.
he Trump tweeted on it, and it didn't sound like he's pushing Kelly out. Kelly's been great to me. All I can say is 5 days. I have to do 5 more days to beat Anthony Scaramucci's record. I'm really working. I think you will. Today's day 5. I think I can do it. I think you got it. You're asking. I hope you come back again. It's good to have you on. Thank you so much.
President Trump this morning reacting to the horrific chemical attack in Syria, blaming President Putin, Russia, and Iran for backing Syrian President Assad. Will President Trump respond with any military action as he did 1 year ago? Republican Senator Susan Collins is here to react next.
This is something that I'm really passionate about. I really want to help. I was on my way out of this life. There are patients out there that don't have a lot of time. Finally, it was like the sun rose again, and I was going to start fighting back now. When those patients come to me and say, "You saved my life. My life was saved by a 2-week-old targeted therapy drug," that's what really drives me to save lives.
Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans makes the complex simple, giving you superhero levels of confidence. Understand the details and get approved in as few as 8 minutes, so nothing stands in your way. Rocket Mortgage, America's largest mortgage lender. Mobile Studios, Avengers Infinity, 1 theaters, April 27th.
As a control enthusiast, I'm all business when I travel. Even when I travel for leisure. So I go national, where I can choose any available upgrade in the aisle without starting any conversations or paying any objections. What can I say? Control suits me. Go national. Go like a pro.
At Beaches, everything's included. For everyone. That's right, Punch Generation. Yeah, all the bad good Beaches all-inclusive resorts. Call 1-800-BEACHES.
She reminds me of the night we cracked 10 billion. Beautiful night. Fate is Del Toro. Now we play.
We need an idea that will shock and awe. Be cold and act. Don't get hung up on emotion.
You have to know a day like this would come. What has the stronger pull? Fear or money? Billions. New season. Only on Showtime. Start your free trial now.
On your phone. Stuck down here between your seat and your console? Play a little hide and seek. Cold. Warmer. Warmer. Up. Boiling. Jackpot. And if you've got cut rate car insurance, you could be picking up these charges yourself. So get Allstate. We're agents help keep you protected from mayhem. I mean,
Megan, is that right? Are you in good hands? You wouldn't accept an incomplete job from anyone else. Why accept it from your allergy pills? Flonase relieves your worst symptoms, including nasal congestion, which most pills don't. Flonase helps block 6 key inflammatory substances. Most pills only block 1.
It all started with a cardboard box. It's what my colleague put his computer on when sitting all day at the office became too painful. So we designed the first Veridesk. Lift it to stand when you want to, lower it to sit when you need to.
I have more energy and I get more done.
Our boss got the company to buy them for us, and I love it.
If you sit every day for work, the Veridesk is a must. It's sturdy and comes fully assembled. And if you don't love it within 30 days, we'll pick it up. Go to Veridesk.com to order yours.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-800-900-0202.
Do you have an idea for an invention or new product? Do you think companies would be interested? Idea? Do you want to try to get a patent? Then call InventHelp now for free information.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. A horrific scene out of Syria Saturday, and I must warn you, we're about to show you some graphic images that might be difficult to watch. The video showing multiple people, including children, whom activists say were attacked with a suspected chemical agent. The attack took place in Douma in eastern Ghouta, near the capital of Damascus. You can see women, children, and men now lifeless. The foam on their noses and lips appears to be a telltale sign of a chemical weapon, a chemical attack. Local doctors say that dozens have died. That number, of course, could rise. CNN cannot independently verify this video, which was taken by anti-government activists and doctors. The Syrian government denies any involvement in the attack, as well as in at least 3 other chemical attacks in the past 6 months. President Trump took to Twitter to respond directly to the attack this morning, writing, quote, "Many dead, including women and children, in mindless chemical attack in Syria. Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to outside world. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Big price to pay. Open area immediately for medical help and verification. Another humanitarian disaster for no reason whatsoever. Sick." Joining us now is Republican Senator Susan Collins. She's a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator Collins, always good to see you. The White House Homeland Security Advisor this morning says nothing is off the table, including a potential military response to this chemical weapons attack in Syria, an apparent weapons attack. Would you support a military response to this?